Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Easy English podcast. I'm Hannah, and today we have a very special episode for our beginner and intermediate listeners. Today, we are going to tell you a slow, easy-to-follow story. It is about a traveler named Leo who goes to the airport, gets to the check-in desk, and suddenly realizes his passport is expired. We will learn some great English words for traveling and handling stressful situations. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, Alex. How are you, Alex?
Hi, Hannah. I am doing great, and I am so excited for this story. To expire means to run out of time or to no longer be valid. It is a terrible feeling when you are at the airport and realize your passport has expired. Have you ever had a travel emergency, Hannah?
Oh, definitely. Once, I lost my boarding pass right before getting on the plane. But our character today, Leo, has a much bigger problem. Let's start the story. Listen carefully to how the words are used. Here we go.
Leo was very excited. He was going to fly to Spain for a 2-week vacation. He packed his suitcase, put on his favorite comfortable shoes, and took a taxi to the airport. The airport was very busy. There were people everywhere carrying big bags, looking at the departure screens, and talking loudly.
Yes, busy means there are many people and a lot of activity. Leo walked to the airline check-in desk. To check in means to show your ticket and your passport, so the airline knows you are ready to fly. You also give them your big suitcases. Leo stood in line for 20 minutes, smiling and thinking about the sunny beaches in Spain.
Finally, it was his turn. The woman working at the desk smiled and said, "Good morning. May I please have your passport and your booking reference?" Booking reference is just a special code of letters and numbers for your flight ticket. Leo smiled back and said, "Sure, here you go." He handed her his blue passport.
The woman took the passport and typed some information into her computer. She looked at the screen, then she looked at the passport again. She stopped smiling. Her face became very serious. This is never a good sign at the airport, is it, Alex?
No, not at all. When the staff stops smiling, you know there is a problem. She looked up at Leo and said, "Sir, I am very sorry, but I cannot check you in for this flight." Leo was confused. He asked, "Why? Is there a problem with my ticket?" The woman shook her head and pointed to the first page of his passport.
"I am afraid your passport expired last month," she said gently. "It is no longer valid. You cannot travel internationally with an expired passport." Let's pause here. Valid means it is legally acceptable and can be used. If your passport is expired, it is invalid. How do you think Leo felt at that moment, Alex?
Oh, his heart must have stopped. Leo felt a wave of heat go through his body. His face went red and his hands started to shake. He took the passport from the woman and stared at the date. She was right. Today was October 15th, and his passport had expired on September 12th. He had completely forgotten to check the dates before booking his trip.
That is a classic mistake. We often check the flight times, the hotel reservations, and the weather forecast, but we forget to check the expiration date on our passport. Leo felt completely panicked. To panic means to feel sudden, intense fear that makes it hard to think clearly. He asked the woman, "Please, is there anything I can do? Can I still get on the plane?"
The check-in agent shook her head. "I am very sorry, sir. Airline rules are very strict. We cannot let you board the plane without a valid passport. If we do, the immigration officers in Spain will send you right back, and the airline will get a big fine." Strict means the rules must be followed exactly, with no exceptions.
Exactly. Airlines are incredibly strict because they don't want to pay those heavy fines. Now, when you are in a situation like this, it is very easy to lose your temper. To lose your temper means to become very angry and start shouting. But Leo did not do that. He knew that shouting at the agent would not help him at all.
That is so important, Hannah. Shouting never solves anything, especially at the airport. Instead, Leo took a deep breath, looked the agent in the eye, and used some very polite, clear English phrases to ask for help. Let's look at the exact words he used, because these can help our listeners if they ever face a difficult situation at an airport.
Yes, let's break down his vocabulary. First, instead of saying, "You have to help me," or "What do I do now?" Leo said, "I understand this is my mistake. Is there any way you can help me find a solution?" This is a great way to start. By saying, "I understand this is my mistake," he showed that he was taking responsibility.
Right. It immediately makes the airline agent want to help him because he is being reasonable. The phrase, "Is there any way?" is also incredibly polite. It is much softer than asking, "Can you help me?" It suggests that you know it might be difficult, but you are hoping for a small possibility.
By the way, if you are enjoying Leo's story and finding these travel phrases useful, taking a second to subscribe or like this episode really helps our show reach other English learners around the world.
It really does. And please leave any questions in the comments. We read and reply to all of them. Anyway, back to Leo at the airport desk.
Yes, "is there any way" is a key phrase for polite requests. For example, if you are late for a train, you might ask, "Is there any way I can catch the next one without buying a new ticket?" It sounds gentle and respectful.
Another great phrase Leo used was, "Could you please advise me on my options?" Let's look at the word advise here. To advise someone means to give them useful information or recommendations about what they should do. And options just means choices or different possibilities.
I love that word, options. In a stressful moment, we often feel like there is only one way out or no way out at all. But asking, "What are my options?" shows that you are ready to think about different solutions. It is professional and keeps the conversation constructive.
The agent, whose name tag said Sarah, appreciated Leo's polite tone. She tapped her chin, thinking, and then said, "Well, you cannot fly today on this ticket. However, we can look at the possibility of rebooking your flight for a later date once you have a new passport."
Oh, rebooking is another excellent word to know. To rebook means to change the date or time of your reservation to a different one. Often, airlines charge a change fee to do this, but it is much better than losing all your money and having to buy a completely new ticket.
Absolutely. Sarah told Leo, "If you can get an emergency passport today, I can rebook you on the same flight tomorrow morning. There will be a small change fee, but your ticket will still be valid." This gave Leo a tiny bit of hope. He asked her, "How long does it take to get an emergency passport, and where do I go?"
An emergency passport is a temporary passport that a government can issue very quickly, sometimes within a few hours, if you have an urgent need to travel. But of course, you usually have to go to a special government office to get it.
Exactly. Sarah pointed toward the exit of the terminal. "There is a government passport office right here at the airport terminal, on the 3rd floor," she explained. "They handle urgent cases for travelers who have expired documents. But you must hurry, because they close in 2 hours.
2 hours? That is not a lot of time. Leo felt his heart start to beat fast again. He thanked Sarah warmly. He said, "Thank you so much for your assistance. I really appreciate your help." This is another beautiful, polite phrase to use when someone helps you in a professional setting. Thank you for your assistance.
Yes, assistance is just a more formal and polite word for help. Using it makes you sound very respectful. Leo quickly grabbed his heavy suitcase and began to run toward the escalators, searching for the signs for the 3rd floor. His hands were sweaty and his mind was racing with questions.
Oh, I can just picture poor Leo running through the crowded airport with his heavy suitcase. His hands are sweaty and his mind is racing. When we say your mind is racing, it means you are thinking about many things very quickly because you are nervous or excited. He must have been so worried that the office would close before he got there.
Exactly. He was thinking, what if they say no? What if the line is too long? What if I don't have the right documents? These are all very normal things to worry about in a situation like this. But he kept moving. He followed the signs that said airport administration and passport services.
Signs are so important at an airport. Let's talk about that word, services. In this case, passport services refers to the office that helps people with passport-related tasks. It is the department that does a specific job for the public.
Right. And when Leo finally reached the third floor, he saw a glass door with a sign that read, Urgent Passport Services, by appointment or emergency only. Leo didn't have an appointment, but this was definitely an emergency.
An appointment is a decided time to meet someone, like a doctor or an officer. Since he did not have one, he had to rely on the emergency rule. So, what did he do when he walked inside?
He walked up to the reception desk. There was a security officer standing there looking very serious. Leo took a deep breath, tried to calm his voice, and said, "Excuse me, sir, my flight is tomorrow morning, and I just realized my passport is expired. The airline agent downstairs told me I could get assistance here."
That was very smart of Leo. He explained his situation clearly and calmly. When you are stressed, it is easy to speak too fast or get angry, but being polite and clear always works best. How did the security officer respond?
The security officer looked at Leo's expired passport, then looked at his flight ticket. He nodded slowly and said, "Yes, this is an urgent case. Please take a number from the machine and fill out this application form. You must wait for your number to be called."
To take a number. This is a very common system in busy offices, banks, or post offices. You press a button on a machine and it prints a small piece of paper with a number, like 75. Then you wait until a screen shows your number or an officer calls it.
Yes, and while he was waiting, he had to fill out an application form. To fill out a form means to write your personal information in the empty spaces on the paper, like your name, your address, and your date of birth.
That is a great phrasal verb to memorize, to fill out. We fill out forms at the doctor's office, at the bank, and definitely at government offices. Leo must have been writing very quickly.
He was. He filled out his name, his passport number, and the details of his flight. Just as he finished writing the last letter of his address, a loud electronic voice spoke over the speaker. "Number 42, please go to counter number 3. Leo looked down at his paper ticket. It was his turn.
What a relief. He didn't have to wait too long. So he went to counter number 3. Who was sitting behind the desk?
An officer named Mr. Davis was sitting there. He looked busy, but he smiled politely when Leo approached the counter. Leo said, "Hello, good afternoon," and handed over his application form, his expired passport, and his flight details.
Greeting the officer with "good afternoon" is a small but very nice touch. It shows good manners even when you are in a rush. What did Mr. Davis say after looking at the documents?
Mr. Davis checked everything carefully on his computer. He said, "Everything looks correct here, Mr. Silva. Since your flight is tomorrow, we can process an emergency passport for you. However, there is an urgent processing fee of $150, and you must provide 2 new passport-sized photographs."
Oh no, photos! Leo was already at the airport. Where could he possibly get passport photos quickly?
That was Leo's exact worry. He asked Mr. Davis, "Is there a photo booth nearby? I don't have any new photos with me." A photo booth is a small cabin or machine where you can sit inside, pay some money, and the machine takes your picture and prints it instantly.
Yes, photo booths are so convenient, especially in train stations and airports. I hope there was one close by.
Luckily, there was. Mr. Davis smiled and pointed down the hallway. He said, "Yes, there is a digital photo booth right next to the elevators. Go quickly, take your photos, and come straight back to this counter. You do not need to take a new number."
That was so kind of Mr. Davis. He allowed Leo to come straight back, which means directly back to him without waiting in the main line again. Leo must have run to that photo booth like a professional sprinter.
He did. He ran to the booth, sat on the small stool,
put his money in the machine, and tried to look calm for the camera. Usually, for passport photos, you are not supposed to smile, so he had to keep a neutral face, even though his heart was beating fast.
That is true. No smiling allowed in official passport photos. You have to look very serious. After the machine printed the photos, did he run straight back to Mr. Davis?
Yes, he grabbed the warm, freshly printed photos and hurried back to counter number 3. Mr. Davis was waiting for him. He took the photos, cut them to the correct size, and pasted one onto the new application form. Then he said, "Perfect. Now, please pay the fee at the payment counter next to us and then return here."
Oh, wait. Let's explain fee to our listeners. A fee is an amount of money you pay for a professional service or a transaction. In this case, it was the processing fee to make the passport quickly.
Yes, and paying a fee is very simple. He went to the payment counter, used his credit card to pay, and brought the receipt back to Mr. Davis. A receipt is the piece of paper that proves you have paid for something.
Perfect. So he had the application, the photos, and the receipt. What was the next step?
Mr. Davis took all the documents and said, "Thank you. Please wait in the seating area. We will print your emergency passport now. It should be ready in about 45 minutes." Leo could finally breathe a real sigh of relief. He sat down on a plastic chair, closed his eyes, and waited.
45 minutes is incredibly fast for a government document. That is amazing. While Leo is waiting, let's look at how helpful the airport staff was. First, Sarah at the check-in desk, and then Mr. Davis at the passport office.
They were wonderful. It shows that if you ask politely and explain your situation clearly, people are often very happy to help you find a solution.
Exactly, Alex. Being polite makes a massive difference when you are in a stressful situation. Let's talk about some of the exact words and phrases Leo used, and some other great English phrases our listeners can use if they ever find themselves in a travel emergency.
That is a brilliant idea, Hannah. When you are stressed, your brain can freeze and it is hard to find the right words. Having a few ready-to-use phrases in your head is like having a safety net. Let's start with how to ask for help politely when you first realize there is a problem.
Yes, instead of just saying, "My passport is old," or crying, "Help me," you can say, "Excuse me, I have a major problem. Can you help me, please?" Let's break that down. "Excuse me" is the perfect polite way to get someone's attention. And "I have a major problem" tells them immediately that this is serious, but you are staying calm.
Right. Major means big or very important. So a major problem is a big, serious problem. Another great phrase to use at the desk is there any way to, for example, is there any way to get an emergency passport today? Or is there any way to change my flight?
Oh, I love that phrase, Alex. Is there any way to sounds so much more polite than "Can you change my flight?" or "Give me a new passport?" It shows that you understand it might be difficult, but you are asking if a solution is possible. It makes the staff member want to help you.
Absolutely. It invites them to think of solutions with you. Now, what about when you need to explain that you made a mistake? In Leo's case, he didn't check his passport date. He could say, "I didn't realize my passport had expired." Or simply, "I made a terrible mistake. What are my options?"
What are my options is an excellent professional phrase. Options means choices. By asking this, you're asking the airline worker or the officer to tell you the different things you can do next. It keeps the conversation moving forward.
Exactly. Instead of focusing on the mistake, you are focusing on the future and the solution. Now, what happens if the first answer they give you is no? Sometimes the staff might say, "I'm sorry, there is nothing we can do." What should you say then, Hannah?
Well, first, do not get angry or start shouting. That will only make them shut down. Instead, you can ask politely, "Is there anyone else I could speak to?" Or,
Could you advise me on what I should do next?
Yes, could you advise me is beautiful. To advise means to give advice or recommendations. It shows you respect their expertise. You're asking for their personal recommendation as an airport professional.
Exactly. Now let's look at what happened next in our story. After 45 minutes of waiting and drinking some very hot, bad airport coffee, Leo heard his name over the speaker. Leo Vance, please come to the window.
Ooh, the moment of truth. Leo stood up, his heart beating fast, and walked back to Mr. Davis's window. Mr. Davis was holding a small emergency passport. It was a different color than a normal passport, but it was fully valid for his trip.
He did it! That is incredible! Mr. Davis smiled and said, "Here you go, Leo. This emergency passport is valid for travel, but remember, you must apply for a regular, full passport as soon as you get back home. This one is only for emergencies."
Leo thanked Mr. Davis about 10 times. He said, "Thank you so much for your help. I appreciate your kindness." This is another great phrase, by the way. I appreciate your kindness, or I really appreciate your help. It is a wonderful way to show deep gratitude.
It really is. To appreciate means to recognize the value of something. It is much warmer and more meaningful than a simple thanks.
So Leo had his emergency passport, but what about his flight? It was already long gone.
Ah, yes, the flight. He had to go back to the main airport terminal, back to the airline check-in desk, and find Sarah again. When Sarah saw him, she gasped and said, "You did it! You got the passport!"
I love Sarah. She was so supportive. Leo said, "Yes, I have the emergency passport. Is there any way I can get on the next flight to Rome?"
And this is where his politeness from earlier paid off. Sarah looked at her computer screen and said, "Well, the afternoon flight is fully booked, but we have one seat left on the evening flight at 8 p.m. Since you were so polite and patient, I can transfer your ticket to that flight for free."
Oh, wow, that is a miracle. Usually, changing a flight can cost a lot of money. But because Leo remained calm, polite, and respectful, Sarah went out of her way to help him. That is the power of good communication.
It truly is. Leo was so happy. He had to wait a few hours at the airport, but he didn't mind at all. He sat in a cafe, called his family to tell them the crazy story, and finally boarded his plane at 8 p.m. He arrived in Rome late that night, tired but incredibly relieved.
What a happy ending to a very stressful day. This story teaches us so many things. First, always check your passport expiration date, at least a month before you travel. Don't be like Leo and check it at the airport.
Yes, make that a rule. Check your documents early. But second, if things do go wrong, remember that staying calm and speaking polite, clear English can solve almost any problem. The people working at the airport are human beings, and they react warmly to kindness.
That is the perfect takeaway, Alex. Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode of the Easy English Podcast. We hope you learned some useful travel phrases and enjoyed Leo's dramatic airport adventure.
We certainly do. Keep practicing those polite phrases. Check your passports tonight, and we will see you in the next episode. Bye-bye, everyone.